Welcome to the Exam Room Podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And today you might notice that we're kind of on location. We are in the office of Dr. Neal Barnard, and today we are going to be talking about something that is very important and on the minds of virtually everyone as we grow older, and that is maintaining strong bones. Is that possible to do without drinking gobs of milk and turning to dairy? We're going to find out, because today we're going to be talking about the top foods for strong bones on a plant-based diet. Dr. Barnard, thanks for being here, my friend.
It's great to see you, Chuck.
I'm really happy to be talking about this because I have an 87-year-old father-in-law downstairs at home who is very much skeptical of eating a plant-based diet, says he doesn't want brittle bones. Is it possible to maintain optimal bone health, strong, dense bones without eating a whole lot of dairy?
Not only is it possible, it's a plant-based diet is exactly what you would want to be doing because it gives you calcium in the healthiest possible form without all the bad stuff. But Chuck, this is really an important question because if you have unhealthy bones, what's going to happen? Hip fractures often just lead to downhill spiraling of health because you're immobile and it leads to one thing and another. Wrist fractures, spinal fractures, all of these are things you don't want. So absolutely, there's a lot you can do with a plant-based diet.
True story. He actually fell and broke his arm, unfortunately, a few weeks ago. So this really is kind of a timely conversation that we're having. So I'm really glad to have it. Let's talk about, though, if somebody is interested in maintaining that plant-based diet or getting started on it, no matter what the age. We've talked in the past about getting calcium from plants as kind of like cutting out the middleman.
Right.
So what are the best plant sources that people should be turning to?
Well, you know, that's exactly it. People think of cow's milk as the source of calcium. Cows don't make calcium. Cows eat calcium in the form of grass, comes from the earth, gets into the green leafy grass, and then it gets into their body. So we're not eating grass. However, when we go to the grocery store, what do you see? You look all around. The green vegetables have to come tops. So broccoli, very, very popular vegetable. Everybody loves it. But broccoli not only has calcium, but it's a highly absorbable form of calcium. Brussels sprouts, same story. Do we think of this as absorbable? Well, maybe milk is more absorbable. Let me give you some numbers. If you take a glass of milk and think, how much of that calcium actually gets into your body as opposed to just going through your body and going out with the waste? The answer is 32%. So in cow's milk, out of every 100 grams of calcium that you're going to consume, only 32 of them ever get into your body. Brussels sprouts, double that. Wow. 64%.
Do we know why that is?
For whatever reason, dairy has a lot of calcium in it, but most of that calcium, more than 60%, does not ever get into your body. So for whatever reason, the type of calcium is just poorly absorbed. Green leafy vegetables, they vary, but virtually all of them in that category, broccoli, kale, collards, Brussels sprouts, those are top 4 foods, really should be in your routine because their calcium absorption really high. Couple exceptions though. Spinach, delicious vegetable. Swiss chard, delicious, but and they have a lot of calcium, but their calcium absorption is really low too.
So that brings me to another interesting question, and that is, well, is there anything nutrient-wise that we could add to the spinach, to the chard, to make their calcium a little bit more absorbable? For example, I think if you add maybe vitamin C to some other vegetables, you can absorb the iron a little bit better?
Yeah, that's the squirt of lemon juice that people are often using. What I would really do is you shouldn't exclude spinach and chard because they're healthy vegetables. I just wouldn't count on them for calcium because you've got so many choices of foods that have a lot of calcium. You're not going to be calcium deficient if these foods are front and center. Let's just list them. Broccoli,
yep.
Kale, collards, Brussels sprouts. But let me say a word for beans. The forgotten bean. You know, our grandparents knew about beans, but somewhere along the generations, everybody thought, you know, that's not for me. That's poor people's food or something. I mean, come on. Let's bring these healthy, humble beans back into our diet. I don't care if it's black beans, pinto beans, soybeans, navy beans, black-eyed peas. Those are good, healthy foods for everybody, and we ought to really bring them back because they got a lot of calcium in them.
Great point. I love beans, particularly fond of the garbanzo bean. Huge fan of hummus. I think a lot of us are. Is there going to be calcium in that?
Absolutely. The garbanzo bean is, every country kind of has its own favorite bean. And garbanzos you think of as being in Italy and Southern Europe in general. And they're great for hummus. Hummus is a breakfast food in much of the Middle East.
Is it really?
It is. That's where it really started. But now it's kind of our lunch or our appetizer or whatever. But garbanzos can go on your salad. You can frankly just take a can of garbanzos and just add them as a side dish for anything. So yes, garbanzos, they count.
Well, see, now you got me thinking about like some hummus on toast for breakfast, right? So like I'm fired up because now you've opened hummus up to that third meal. I didn't know that this was possible yet.
Beans in general are part of breakfast for so many cultures, kind of forgotten, here in Washington, D.C. for whatever reason. But if you got on a plane, went to London, you could go into any breakfast buffet, and they've got a big vat of baked beans that go right on your breakfast plate. And if you were spring breaking in Cancun, this is for a lot of young people their introduction to beans for breakfast. It's black beans with a little pico de gallo. And hummus is, as I mentioned, a breakfast food. If you're from Syria or other places in the Middle East, that's how it started.
Wouldn't it be fair, though, to have this conversation without also asking about the studies that have been shown that people who eat a plant-based diet perhaps are at a higher risk for having fractures as they get older? What's your response to that?
Well, in our studies, we bring people in and we'll randomly assign them to a vegan diet versus an omnivorous diet or whatever. And I got to tell you, Chuck, we find that both groups, at least at the beginning of the study, they tend to run low in calcium. No matter which group they're in, unless they're planning for how to bring in the calcium. And people can cheerlead for dairy all they want to. People really are not drinking milk and don't particularly want to. And so the dairy industry is trying to push them back into it. If they do, we've already talked about the fact that only about a third of that calcium gets in your body anyway. So regardless of your diet, you've got to be thinking about the greens and the beans because they bring you nutrition that's just not there in that glass of milk.
Is there a risk of ever overdoing it with calcium? Can that be like too much of a good thing is not a good thing?
Absolutely. You go to the store and you get calcium pills. And you think, this is going to be good for me. This will get into my bones. Where it might get is into your kidneys. Researchers at Harvard found that calcium supplementation is particularly risky if you're taking it on an empty stomach. For some reason, when people would take it with foods, somehow the calcium absorption was moderated a little bit. But if they were taking it on an empty stomach, it went through the body, into the kidneys, and led to kidney stones.
All right, good to know. Too much of a good thing. A lot of that is tied also with vitamin D. Does vitamin D, well, you think calcium and vitamin D with dairy, almost synonymous. What role does that play, if any, in bone health?
You're eating your green leafy vegetables. The calcium is going down your digestive tract. Vitamin D, which comes from the sunlight on your skin, the vitamin D pulls the calcium out of your digestive tract into your blood. That's its whole job. It helps you absorb it. So you do need vitamin D. You need it from the sun. But if you're not in the sun, a supplement will do you. And most doctors would say about 2,000 international units per day.
All right. Before we open up the doctor's mailbag, let's talk just briefly about what we have coming up in LA. Tomorrow, if we release this show here, March 30th, the Ebell out in Los Angeles. You and I are going to be live on stage for the first time ever doing the exam room in front of a live crowd. I could not be more excited for this.
It is going to be so exciting. It's going to be you, me. We've got wonderful guests. We're going to have fun. And I got to tell you, I am ready to be with our LA friends again.
Oh, me too. And Dr. Kristi Funk, you talk about the guests. Dr. Kristi Funk is going to be there. Dr. Columbus Batiste, he will be there. Samantha Harris, host of Dancing with the Stars, she's going to be joining us that night. Toni Okamoto, plant-based on a budget. So taking that whole idea that eating a healthy plant-based diet means it's going to take up your whole paycheck, she crumples that up and throws it right in the wastebasket. She's going to be with us, showing us how to do it quick, easy, and on the cheap. Plus, Harley Quinn Smith, phenomenal actress and musician. I mean, that's an all-star lineup of health right there.
It is. We're going to have a good crowd, but I think we can still accommodate a few more people, tell me?
There's always room.
Okay.
There's always room. So pcrm.org/events is the website to visit right now to get your tickets. Or click the link in the episode notes. So pcrm.org/events, or right down there in the episode notes will get you your ticket. So VIP tickets, by the way. I mean, we've got dinner beforehand. It's not just the show. It's dinner and a show, 6:30, talking about recipes inspired by Toni Okamoto, her latest book. So we're going to be serving those for dinner. And then the show starts at 8. But you also get with the VIP tickets, exclusive meet and greets, photo opportunities, a great time. But if you can't make dinner, no problem. Just come on for the show at 8. Can't wait. Absolutely can't wait. Let's open up the doctor's mailbag. You ready?
You bet.
All right, this one comes to us from somebody who is watching on YouTube. This is from actually the last show that we did together. They want to know, what is the best type of calcium for bones as a senior, and should we take anything else in the supplement such as K2, K7, or magnesium? We talked a little bit about supplementation. Okay. This is getting a little bit more specific.
Yeah, it is. Well, let's go back to the basics, because that's really where it's at. You do need calcium. And we've talked about greens like Brussels sprouts, kale, collards, broccoli, that kind of stuff. Beans, great. You do need vitamin D from the sun or supplements. You need exercise. That gives your bones a reason to live. You need to be sure you're strengthening your wrist bones, little push-ups, sit-ups, and even regular walking bounces your bones and muscles around enough that it'll stress them a little bit and strengthen them too. But what about other things? I would not supplement calcium unless your doctor says you should. And I would not supplement vitamin K either. It's true there are different forms, but you are just not going to see a person who's eating a lot of greens and ends up vitamin K deficient. The greens bring it to you. They bring a lot of it to you. And your healthy gut microbiome will convert it from one form to another, giving you the vitamin K that you need.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it would be really difficult on a plant-based diet, especially if you are eating those greens, to come up a little bit short in that arena. Yeah. I know that people who are on warfarin have to be especially careful with the amount of greens that they're eating.
Because they get too much, yeah. Although even them, they should not shy away from greens. What they should, the old approach, the kind of 1980s idea was, wait a minute, you're on this drug, you don't want to be getting too much vitamin K, so don't eat vegetables. And the patients would say to the doctor, but that's the healthy food. Can't I have that? What we now know is that as long as the amount of vegetables you eat is kind of the same from day to day, you're getting a lot of it, your doctor can test you and can get you on the warfarin dose that you need. You're going to be fine.
How is it, here's an interesting one. How is it that exercise resistance training can actually strengthen the bones? What's happening there? Because a bone isn't exactly a muscle. The muscle you get, you work it out, the muscle gets bigger. How does the bone get stronger when it gets stressed? Okay,
well, the muscle is attached. It goes through what we call the insertion into the bones, and the bone it's got an architecture, and it is under stress too, and it responds to it. You take a tennis player, and you measure, let's say their dominant arm is their right arm. That's the one they're swinging with. If you measure the bone density of their right arm, it is significantly stronger than their left arm. So they got the same genetics in both arms, and everything. The same foods go to both arms, but that recurrent stress strengthens those bones.
Interesting. That sounds like that could have come straight from Dr. Kim Williams right there with the tennis reference.
There you go.
Let's take a question here from Blues. I want to go back to oil. We talk about that frequently on the show as well. They write, I heard that corn oil is the healthiest oil. What is your opinion on corn oil?
Well, what they're thinking of is corn oil is remarkable that it has very little saturated fat. Mm-hmm. So you and I have talked about this a lot of times. Saturated fat is bad fat. Yeah. Your body doesn't need any of it. And when you get it, it causes your cholesterol level to rise. That leads to heart disease, leads to Alzheimer's disease. You don't want that. However, corn oil is lower in saturated fat than all the animal fats, and even lower than olive oil. That's a lot lower, and that's really good. However, the problem is with all fats, a fair amount of calories. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we learn how to use a nonstick pan instead of hanging out with all these oils.
I think there's still so much confusion. Even though we've done so many shows about oils, there's still so much confusion. There's a lot of people that are like, no oil whatsoever, that's the healthiest route. And if you introduce any little bit, it's just like, what are you doing? How does the typical person, balance what's healthy versus not being, just driving themselves crazy about it?
Well, oils aren't poison. So if you're having a little bit of oil here and there, who cares? The person who really should care is the person who's trying to lose weight. Every gram of any kind of oil, no matter how healthy it is, This can be a bottle of extra virgin olive oil straight from Tuscany. It's still got 9 calories per gram. So if you want to lose weight, get the oils out of your diet. Secondly, if you've got diabetes or insulin resistance, you really want to get them out of your diet, because that will allow the fats to come out of your muscles and out of your liver and let your insulin work again. So oil is going to work against you. If you've got a hormonal issue, hot flashes, menstrual pain, diminish the oils. Because oils, for some reason, like any kind of fat, causes estrogen levels to go up, and that's a problem. So, but on the other hand, you're young, you're healthy, you don't have any health issues, you're not trying to lose weight, you're not insulin resistant. I don't think you need to blot the last bit of oil off of your noodle.
Okay. I love this question from Claudia, because this is kind of what the show is all about. Claudia is just getting started, and I think you can see exactly where she's coming from. How do we prevent heart problems, fatty liver disease, cancer, or kidney damage when most of the foods that we eat are so full of sugar, salt, and sodium? What diet is recommended for us?
Yeah, well, sugar, salt, and sodium, those are issues, but those are not the main drivers of the problems that she's asking about. The main drivers we have is, take me. I grew up in North Dakota. A plate came at dinner time, and in the middle of the plate was a big hunk of meat. And if you had a hamburger, there was this big hamburger and cheese on top. Those are the big drivers of the health issues. It's the fat in the foods that end up in the liver, causing the fatty liver she's asking about. That's what's the big driver of cardiovascular disease. So if we get rid of those things, even if you haven't yet reduced sugar and you haven't yet reduced sodium, when you get rid of the animal products, you are doing a huge favor for your body just with that. That said, you don't need a lot of extra sugar, and you can minimize that. Don't have a zero sugar diet. An apple has natural sugar in it. An orange has natural sugar. A pear has, those are natural sugars that your body was designed to use for fuel. So those are good things.
Let's grab a couple more before we wrap things up. We're going to keep it on the short side today. Stella, struggling with diabetes right now, wants to know whether or not she could theoretically eat a little bit of whole grain rice in her diet.
Absolutely, eat a lot of whole grain rice. I would. What I would do is get away from the animal products. And you've heard me talk about this before, and you'll see it in my Reversing Diabetes book. The problem in diabetes is to get the fat out of the muscle cells and the fat out of your liver cells. That's where the insulin is trying to work. And if those cells are filled with fat, they just can't accept they can't pull the sugar out of the blood. So rice does not have any saturated fat in it. It has very little of any kind of fat. Bring it into your diet. But not just rice. Have it as part of a balance with beans, other legumes, lots of vegetables, and healthy fruit.
All right, and let's wrap things up with another question about vitamin D. We were talking about the various forms of vitamin K a little bit earlier, but AR is wondering about the various forms of vitamin D, wants to know what's the difference between regular old vitamin D, I suppose, and then vitamin D3.
Okay, short answer, they all work. Okay, long answer. When the sun hits your skin, it's making vitamin D3. So that's the one in you and in every other animal. D2 is a form called that works fine. It's put in supplements, but you'll see supplements of D2 or D3. D3 is quote unquote the natural one, but they both work.
There you go. The skinny on D3.
There you go.
All right, and here you go. March 30th, the Ebell, Los Angeles, California, for the very first time ever, the Exam Room Live and in person. So excited that you're going to be there. Again, Dr. Kristi Funk, she's going to be there. Dr. Columbus Batiste, Toni Okamoto, Plant-Based on a Budget, Samantha Harris, Dancing with the Stars, and of course, our good friend Harley Quinn Smith as well. I mean, it's just going to be so great. I can't wait for dinner, especially. I mean, my goodness gracious. Thank you so much for making the trek all the way across the country to make this happen with us. My hat is off to you.
You know, I think it's going to be informative. It's going to be educational, but heck, it's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 12 million downloads. I think the people are ready to party, man. One last bit, and super important, is to let everybody know that today's episode of the Exam Room Live has been powered by the Gregory J. Reiter Memorial Fund. You know, Dr. Barnard, the Gregory J. Reiter Memorial Fund supports organizations like the Physicians Committee that carry on Greg's love for animals by promoting plant-based health and working to end animal abuse while emphasizing programs that promote systemic change and also benefit people. They've got a great website. You can visit it right now, GregoryReiterFund.org. That's Gregory Reiter, REITER, terfund.org. Allison, Mahoney, and the gang there, we just couldn't do the show without them.
Absolutely. Greg had such a heart for animals. Allison has carried that forward in such a beautiful way. So thank you, Allison, and thanks to everybody who's supporting the Greg Reiter Fund, too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Dr. Barnard. This has been a real treat getting to do this in person with you. Can't wait to do it again tomorrow.
You bet. Can't wait.
All right, and to the crew behind the scenes that makes the magic happen, thank you guys so very much for all of your hard work. And to you, exam roomies, thanks so very much for watching and raising your health IQs with us. And for everybody here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We will talk to you again very soon, but until then, keep it plant-based.